Here we are, ready to talk about dragons today. We're joined by Lynn and Vanessa Lisle. Now, I could introduce these amazing women and tell you their resumes, but I think I'll let them do that themselves. Abby, why don't you give us a short rundown on what you do, who you are?
Okay. Well, first, thank you for hosting the show today, Jock. It's always a pleasure to be able to speak and work with you. We're going to talk about dragons today. So, a little bit about myself, longtime contactee, a longtime experiencer, currently working as an intuitive medium, energy healer, sound healer, spiritual advisor, just meditator, whatever. Honestly, wherever I'm, and they're giving me the image of like wherever people exist, where they're walking in between realms, that's where I feel the most heart fulfilled and my most at peace place. So with that probably comes the opening of doorways into other dimensions and other realms, hence the reason why I was introduced. I don't want to say introduced, I remembered the dragons.
Right, and your episode here on Transition to New Terra podcast was the second one. It was called The Great Remembrance.
Mhm.
And Vanessa's episode was number 7. It was called Soul Family. And so you've both had your individual um, interviews, and now you're together talking about dragons. And I think it's going to be a beautiful thing. We have a short time today because you guys are both busy, and we're going to get right to it. Vanessa, why don't you tell us about you and give us a little bit of your resume?
Sure. So I'm Vanessa Lisle Widergren, and I am a professional psychic medium. I have been full-time for about 5 years now. I also teach a psychic mentorship course. I have levels 1, 2, and 3, if anyone's interested. And I also channel a Pleiadian being named Raina. So I guess that's the short of it.
And you have a book coming out soon called, or tomorrow, called The Beings. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, yeah. So I have a book I'm co-authoring called The Beings. Comes out tomorrow on Amazon, and it's a collaborative effort from a bunch of different people who've encountered or dealt with extra-dimensional or ET beings. And I believe there's about 14 different authors, so it's a bunch of really cool stories all kind of put together.
Nice. The Beings. That's a really cool title. I like short, pithy titles like that. The Beings.
Oh,
Beautiful.
I agree. I didn't pick it. My editor picked it, but I like it a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you both, and you guys can decide who wants to answer first. First of all, are dragons real?
Yeah.
Yes.
That pause was awesome because you can, my audience, I hope that my audience is the common person who is standing in McDonald's and they're on their phone and they're like looking at this weird thing about dragons and like, of course dragons aren't real. They're going to say dragons aren't real, and you both said yes, they're real. So if they're real, how come we can't see them? Is the question.
Do you want me to go
Well,
first?
either way. I'll,
um,
I'll let Abby go first.
so if you want to, for the common person who's listening to this and they're like, why should I believe these two women who are sitting here? I urge them to go and look at why, if dragons were not real, then so many civilizations would not have taken the time and the effort to, I'm getting goosebumpies, to chisel them into their art, into the sides of their building. Go back to the Chinese zodiac. That was part of their zodiac. I mean, and everything else within their zodiac, within there, are all real things, real animals that you see on this planet. Dragons are the only thing. So what, they just decided randomly, oh, let's just make up something that's not real to be one of those? It doesn't make any logical sense.
Right.
So they were absolutely a part of civilization. They interacted with humans. From what has been shared and spoken to me via them, is that we actually created a very, very tight spiritual connection with them. almost telepathic, and we would have essentially our own dragon that we were extremely close with, and very like in the movie The Golden Compass, right, where you're almost tethered to this animal, like a spirit animal in a way. But they worked with us in tandem. And so what was shared with me was that another species came onto this field, into our knowingness on this planet, and they were eradicating the dragons. And these beings were of such power and substance that we humans, we couldn't protect our dragons. We couldn't eradicate these beings, and that the dragons chose to leave us because it was causing us so much internal turmoil that there was nothing that we could do. We were just oh my gosh, I'm losing the word right now, but just having to watch it happen. Helpless. There we go. We were helplessly watching these beings that we had so much love and care for being hurt. And so they made the choice to, and they never said leave, they just left our knowingness. So Vanessa, I would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, Vanessa, I mean, she's saying that the dragons in some way are still here. Is that what you're saying, Ivy?
Yes and no. Yes and no. There are absolutely, well, I can feel them in certain areas. And almost, and there are some that are around mountains. I actually was just connecting on Friday with somebody, and I was led towards a mountain within China. And when I fell into that, I was like, oh, whoa, that's still being guarded by dragons. There's still dragons inside of that. So I don't know. I don't have the end all be all answer for that, but I know that some are still here, but the majority have all gosh, I don't know how to describe it because I can see them, right? I mean, I can see them being here and walking in our space, but I'm seeing them with a different vision. And so I don't know how to place that in terms of human language.
Right, right. So Vanessa, what do you think?
So, okay, a very cool story, by the way. To build on top of that, I'm not a dragon expert by any means. I've just encountered them a lot as a psychic medium, and so I actually didn't know that dragon spirit guides were a thing when I first started, 5 years ago. And I found out quickly because I met people's dragon spirit guides. I was like, I'm sure Abby, because she's a medium too, when you're connecting, you get impressions of people's guides you're speaking to, or at least, I do, most of us do. And I was like, there's a dragon here. Interestingly enough. I believe that most spirit guides in general, especially, I would call dragons on the same level as when I meet Fae spirit guides. So like fourth dimensional beings. So like they're like superimposed on top of us, but they're just that level higher a little bit out of range of our physical understanding. But the people who are, sensitive, like mediums and stuff, who can sense spirits and see spirits, we can kind of access we kind of play around in that higher awareness a little bit because we've learned how to kind of move our attention there. I think they're fourth dimensional beings, because I see them very similarly to how I see earth elementals and fae spirit guides, which are also a thing, incidentally. But I've probably met at least 100 in 5 years, different dragons, spirit guides.
And what do they look like?
All of them are different. In fact, there's different kinds. I've met a lot of, like, some of the dragons kind of look like the ones from the Targaryens. And some of them are kind of like long, like I've seen depictions of like water dragons or like the Chinese dragons. I've met a couple of those, but they're different ones.
And they appear
Usually
to you. They appear to you. I mean, so
just
like Abby was saying, I don't see them with my eyes,
yes.
but I see them in another way. So that this is what you're talking about. You see them in another way.
Yeah, so I see everything because I'm just the kind of medium I am. I see everything on my mental screen, and if anybody's kind of curious what that is, if I told you right now, picture an apple that's green, can you? That's your internal mental screen. And that's what, as a medium, I use. But yeah, it's the same way. Sometimes I'm talking to people's past loved ones, and I'll be like, okay, is it the short woman with the really curly hair? Just how I can see people's past loved ones sometimes when I'm reading for them. It's the same I can see dragon spirit guides.
Mhm. And you know, and to piggyback on that, another way that I've been introduced, I was first introduced, the very first dragon that came in through a reading was when I was in the Akashic records. And it came in through that, my sitters Akashics, their lifetime that they had writing that dragon. And so half the reading came through via the dragon telling the story of that lifetime with them.
All right, when you say riding the dragon,
Literally writing it, just like you have in the House of Dragons. And I am going to preface this for the skeptics. No, the House of the Dragons was not even in existence when I was doing these readings. So like it wasn't entered in my consciousness. And then therefore now I'm starting to see these. I've been seeing dragons for years and years and years and years. So yeah.
so Vanessa, have you seen the people riding dragons? Has that come into onto your mental screen?
No, but to be honest, I think anything is really possible. Abby, are you sure it was planet Earth?
Yeah, because this was a Templar. Now granted, so dragons for me, you know, they're elemental. So when I see dragons, I can immediately feel like, oh, you're a fire dragon, you're an earth dragon, metal dragon, you know, water dragon. And that for me is the differences in how they look and appear and their shapes and sizes and colors. But so I often see them with the angelics. So they're within that angelic realm. And it took me a while to understand why the dragons worked so closely with the angelics. And it was, well, the angelics are part of the creation beings, and the dragons are the elemental beings. And so you can't have creation unless you're also working in tandem with the elements. So it's almost like this yin and yang, they work together.
All right, so a lot of researchers and mediums have said that dragons are guarding the earth. So do either of you have any ideas about what dragons are guarding the earth from? What or who
Yeah.
they're guarding it from?
So essentially, they're elemental beings. So all the elemental beings are very tied to the planet, the preservation of the planet, that sort of thing. Just like any Fey being would be. It's just very important to them to like protect this planet, which is like a living consciousness. And it's funny that Abby, you mentioned you see them working with the angelics because the angelics, they're tied to this planet too, which is really interesting. They're part of Earth's higher etheric realms, in my experience. And the funny thing about dragons is they're not, I don't think they're native to Earth because I've seen in Akashic records that I've seen they used to have societies. They're actually kind of a warrior society. And they have a different, people ask, are they good or bad? They're kind of neutral, to be honest, just because they have their own set of ethics, because they're not human. They have their own ethics, and they're really, it's honor and protection is extremely important to them. So oftentimes I've noticed in the ones I've gotten to speak to, because you know they come up in sessions. I'm like, you have a dragon guide, can I ask them questions? They're often super protective of their person that they're mentoring, guarding a guide to. So I'll notice immediately just trying to access their energy. I notice a dragon spirit guide right away because they're protecting them just to make sure, you know, they're vetting me, they're making sure I'm okay. Um, I also noticed that the dragons are they're super wise beings, like anciently wise. And oftentimes, what they'll be helping clients with is astral projection, or like they'll appear to them in the astral realm when they're out of body traveling at night when they're dreaming. Just because I do believe that the fourth dimension, the astral dimension, is kind of their domain. And oftentimes they're trying to bring their person that they're working with to higher wisdom. So they'll usually help them um, they'll try to hint for them to come across like, you know, esoteric stuff that would interest them. They'll try and hint and push them to, you know, gain knowledge, or they'll just be directly teaching them knowledge in astral, or these people can meditate and try and communicate with them and try and glean knowledge from them.
Yeah, so I agree with all of that. Another aspect that is interesting is when a dragon often will show up in a reading, what they will say is this person has a dragon heart. And so when I hear that, they're showing me that the person who my client has had a lifetime as a dragon. They have lived as a dragon. And so, and I've received certain messages as well, I mean, similar messages as well from the angelics, and they will say, well, they have an angelic fractal in them. And so there is a portion of that being laying there that I'm working on that has angelic energy within them. So it's the same thing with the dragon heart. And I've received it enough where I understand. Granted, I'm also open to knowing that I don't understand this as well. That when a sitter is there and a dragon comes through, the only reason why a dragon is coming through is because they have lived a life as a dragon. And therefore, because I have had that even with other beings, multiple other beings, that, you know, people ask, well, why can you talk to a Lyran, and why can you talk to an Andromedan, or, you know, all these different realms? It's because you've lived a life as one of those. And therefore, within your DNA is this frequency code that therefore you can tap into it, and you can hear it, and you can feel into that. It's not foreign to you. And so the same thing goes along with a dragon. So I know now that if a dragon shows up for a client, then that client has lived a lifetime as a dragon.
Well,
Okay,
Vanessa,
interesting.
Vanessa talked about in her episode Soul Family, she talked about how to speak with someone, like, let's say we wanted to talk to Thor Han. Well, she says, well, the only way I could talk to him is if he was part of my soul family. Did I get that right, Vanessa?
Right. So, like me, I have a Pleiadian spirit guide. Her name's Raina. The reason why Raina talks to me is because Raina and me are like direct soul family. Consider her like my sister. I don't know Thorhan, so Thorhan probably wouldn't be talking to me, you know? Actually, to build on what Abby was just saying,
Yeah.
I do believe, because I've seen it, I believe, because I've seen it, that yes, people have had like dragon spirit guides and that's how they're connected to the dragons. But in a few rare instances, I've seen people with dragon spirit guides when they didn't have previous dragon lives. Interestingly enough, right?
Yeah.
I'm not an expert or anything. I've just witnessed that, but I think you're right. I think that's the typical thing. Another thing too is I have a very good friend. He's Lemuria Heart Healing on TikTok, and he is very about the dragons. He's got dragon guides. He heals with the dragons, and they actually have him work on people's hearts and like pull out like different crystal hearts and things like that. And his dragon guides had were the ones who kind of showed him how to do that. So,
Mhm.
so cool that you mentioned that.
So on top of the healing, I love that we're kind of segueing into dragon healing, because they are
Mhm.
master healers,
Yeah.
and they absolutely assist me in some of my healings. The thing that I love I'm not surprised by it. I've always been very drawn towards the runes and like the druids, that when I'm doing this on my hand because I've seen literally like a dragon like claw go in one of my clients' hands, right? And they're doing this, and what they're doing is putting into this. I see symbols and they look like runes, and they're literally putting these golden light runes, but they're putting energy into my client's body. And
Wow.
I just find it very interesting, and this is the reason why I want to go to Scotland so bad. You know, the dragons there have been calling me for a while, but why we have the runes and the Celts. And I was actually talking to an individual, and he's been running sacred site tours for all around the world for 30 years, and he said it's coming out more and more and more that actually Scotland might be one of the oldest places on our planet where civilization began. That is because so many people say it was in Egypt, in those areas, and he's like, no, they're actually finding Scotland might be where it was at. So I'll just leave that I'm just going to put that on the table. But I just find it very interesting that when the dragons come in, they always put the symbols in. So
That's cool.
my dragons were urging me for the longest, for a really long time. They kept showing me these symbols and they're like, you need to tattoo these like going down my spine. And I'm like, no, I'm not getting tattoos. And they're like, no, you need this. Like, you need to tattoo. And like, they're giving me all these symbols. And so, anyway,
They're
so we're still in an
that's so
argument.
that's so funny. They're a very different culture, to be honest, and just what I've encountered with the dragons, like they're not a human culture.
Mm.
And I could see they're very persistent. Like I could see them being like, no, you need this protection spell of runes on your back because we want to protect you. So that's so funny. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, the and that's why like I joked before we came on and I've said in other shows, like if I were to ever sit down and have like a pint with anybody that I work with, it would be the dragons. And it's just because they're quirky. I mean, they can be like so loving, but I've also heard them be, they can be sarcastic, but they can also be a little bit pushy. They're just very, very dynamic beings, but ultimately extremely loving. They are very work oriented, very mission oriented. Like when they show up for a healing, they're going to be doing a healing. And
Hmm.
you mentioned earlier, Jock, do they protect this planet? I was doing a shamanic journey for somebody else, and through that vision, I went down into the central core of Earth, and it showed this beautiful quartz crystal, which is our core. And again, completely in line with Vanessa, Gaia is her own sentient being. But down around there were all these beautiful, beautiful white dragons. And they are all protecting that central core, that central crystal that is the heart of this planet.
And,
And recently, the dragons were showing me, I'm sorry, Jock,
go
the
ahead.
dragons showed me that there are dragon ley lines, a dragon grid around this planet. I mean, I think there are multiple different grids around the planet, but the dragons themselves have put in a grid around, and they showed me all these lines, and they're the different elements, like one line, like earth element, water element, and they just showed me the entire planet. And that essentially, to be a lay worker, I don't know. I'm going to explain this to the best of my abilities. It is as simple as going in and wanting to like pluck a chord like you would a guitar string and putting out a frequency. And if you can just go to certain pinpoints around the planet and tap into these dragon ley lines, and essentially with your energy, bing, with that frequency, they can align things all around the planet. And that there are starting to be certain people that are feeling this call.
And the white dragons at the core of the earth protecting our crystalline planet, do they look like dragons in the movies, or are they more like the Chinese dragons that are the serpentine ones?
The ones they almost, this is just to me, and understand that each one of us with our psychic visions have filters. My vision of them, what I saw was they almost looked like they were smooth, almost like they had a soft coat like feathers, but not. I do believe it would almost be, like the inside of like the oyster shells, those type of a scale. It's like an opalescent,
Mm.
and they're just smooth. They have a little bit of a longer neck, just slightly, just slightly than like the Targaryen dragons that we see. But essentially built like that. I mean, just the huge bodies, but they weren't as like I did not see any hard jagged edges on them, which I have seen in other dragon beings that have
Oh,
like the hard points on this, or like different hard points on bodies. They were much more smoothed out, and it just felt like it would be soft to touch them.
and they have wings, these white dragons?
I did not see any of them flying. That
Right.
does not mean that they don't. I have seen a white dragon guarding my house. And whenever I see her guarding my house, I always know, oh, stuff's about ready to go down somewhere on this planet. And she never speaks to me. She's about 40 feet tall when she's sitting, because she is much taller than my house. And she has the clear quartz armor actually on her, but she's fully white, and she does have very small wings.
Oh. So Vanessa, what about you? When you see these dragons, you said that they appear in different ways, but in different forms, just like different species maybe or something like that. But do you think dragons can take any form they want and they just choose the form that they've taken, or is it that they have a certain form and there just happens to be different kinds of dragons with different kinds of specific forms?
Well, you have to argue that all fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional beings can kind of, you know, present themselves psychically to you any way they want. But I do think that these beings do have a form in general that's their typical form that they can choose to show you or not. But typically, most typically, I think I see dragons that kind of remind me of like the Targaryen dragons. That's the most common. And they come in every color. I've met red ones, I've met black ones, I've met dark green ones, I've met blue ones, I've met yellow ones. They're all kind of different, which is kind of cool. They're all kind of unique.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to look up Targaryen dragon, but I might as well just ask you guys because you both use that. I don't know what a Targaryen dragon is.
Oh, it's from the House of Dragon. If you want to check out, it's a popular TV show based on a Game of Thrones book called Fire and Blood, which is a really good book, by the way.
Okay.
You know what's so funny, Abby, that you mentioned is that you said your female white dragon that guards your house doesn't say much. I've noticed, because I personally am not a dragon. I don't have any dragon spirit guides. Dragon spirit guides are a little hesitant to talk to me. They're a little terse. They're a few words with me because they don't know me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I noticed I have friends who have dragon spirit guides, and they're like, yeah, we get into these long, deep philosophical conversations. But when I'm as a medium, they can oftentimes be a little, you're not of my people, so I'm a little hesitant with you. So,
Yeah, the impression that I always get from her is because I'll see her sitting in her back, my house is behind her and she's just sitting and completely upright. And I'll walk by her and I'll be like, hey, like, what's about ready to happen? Like, why? I just know enough, like, oh, shoot, like, why are you here? And she'll just look down on my eye and then she'll just go like this. And if she'll acknowledge that I'm standing and talking to her, and then she immediately just slowly puts her eyes back up forward. And the
right.
whole feeling I get is, I can't talk to you. I'm working. Like, I'm working
Yeah,
now.
they're a warrior class. They take duty and protection and the mission super seriously. They're a very serious, I'm not gonna lie, guys, they're a very serious race to talk to. Like the
Mhm.
Pleiadians, they're fun, they're chill, they'll talk to me a bunch. If you have a Pleiadian spirit guide, I am, I am Pleiadian, but the dragons are not so much. It's so funny, they'll use very few words with me. Sometimes, depends on the dragon, but I'll just be like, why do you work with this person? And he'll be like, protection. I'll be like, cool, you want to elaborate? And they'll be like, they won't. They'll just answer. I'll be like, all right, great.
So what's interesting, another thing about dragons, and it's just coming to my mind, is they're also very sometimes when I begin to channel them, it can almost sound and to get into almost a pattern like a Native American chant would almost go into.
Oh, cool.
So there's an aspect of maybe the natives culture were channeling some of the dragons in term, because they are also so in tune with all of the elementals. They worked with the elementals strongly, the natives did, and Native Americans did. And so perhaps that's sometimes why when I'm channeling a dragon, it can sound a little bit like, if I go into song, a little bit like a Native American tone to it.
Cool.
Well, can I ask you guys why you think that Homo sapiens sapiens, this silly, quite often barbaric race is worth protecting, according to the dragons?
Because we're capable of such beauty.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think if our societies weren't kind of encumbered by negative forces for the last few thousand years that have shaped us to bring out the worst in us, like our mainstream media is constantly driving this fear narrative. A lot of these, organized religions try to keep people scared and under control. And I think so much of our worst parts as a society have been really encouraged by these baddies in control over the last millennia, like the, Ciakahrr reptilians, the Orion Greys, and the Bad Anunnaki. These three players, even though they all don't really get along with each other, they're all like co-competing. They work together at certain points to control us and keep us in fear and keep us subjugated. Um, I think that especially with all of these spirit guides coming in lately, all of these extraterrestrial influences, they're all really turning the tides to help bring society to a higher level. Apparently we're all graduating to fifth dimensional consciousness, the Earth's raising her frequency. I think we're finally kind of making better on what society can be in the future. So I think all these guides, all these people, all these mediums, just like me and Abby here, we're all here at this moment in time because we're at quite the turning point in Earth's history, quite the crux, where my pleading spirit guide brain has assured me that we've already won because she's from 400 years in the future. And she's like, we're already on such a good trajectory. We just, everybody, the Pleiadians ask that please try and always see the good as much as possible. Don't try and look at society as we're barbaric. Try and see that, there's 100 people who are just amazing, wonderful, good-hearted human beings for every, one that is a little bit more selfishly focused or negatively focused. So
Yeah.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful that we're being protected, and we don't even know, some of us don't even know our own beauty, our own capabilities, and so we don't know why we should be protected. So our view of ourselves in general, I think, is that we're sort of petty and really, like with all the wars going on throughout human history, you'd think, whoa, we're just a warring species that just wants to kill everybody. But I think you're right that we've been influenced by the Draco, by archons, and that these negative influences have sort of led us off a cliff for thousands of years, and we do have an incredibly beautiful future ahead of us. And Dan Cooper has said that we're going to be the 6th of the species in the Sphere Being Alliance, and that's a great honor, and that because his contacts have been to the future. They don't just see the future, they've been to the future and say, yeah, human beings are the 6th race in the Sphere Being Alliance, and that's the sphere beings are, one of the highest, let's say, most advanced species around. So that's a great honor for us. So that's a good way to look at it.
what are they called? The sphere beings? Just because
The sphere
I've
beings,
never,
yeah, sphere beings.
I've never heard of them. Interesting. I'm gonna have to ask Serena about it later.
Okay. Yeah, well, I asked you in one of our readings, I asked a question about the sphere beings, and that was the only question out of 13 readings that Raina said, I can't tell you the answer to that because for security reasons.
Oh, interesting. That's probably why, it's so funny when I'm channeling, when I'm doing a reading, when I'm just channeling information, I don't ever remember what I said. It's like the part of my brain that's focused on like creating what I'm saying and remembering it isn't there. The part of my brain that's like repeating like a parrot what Raina says is the only thing that's active. So that's so no wonder Raina's never talked to me about it because that's so funny. You asked her about it too, and she wouldn't answer
She
either.
wouldn't answer. Yeah, I totally
Oh, that's
respect.
amazing.
That makes me feel like, because, as someone who seeks out mediums to give me the intel, because I want the intel. I want to know it all. I want to know the whole history of the universe, you know? So I'm like, what, you guys know something? Because academia is not telling me. All the books are written by nefarious idiots, you know? So I got to consult the mediums, and I'm like, well, you know, I just want to know, what's happening out there, you know? So yeah, I wanted to ask you guys about dragons. Do they procreate? Do they eat? If they're in the fourth dimension, or in fourth density, as it's called, do they need to procreate like we do, or can they just, or how do they come about? How do they come into existence?
Are you
It's
asking your guide? Because I was like, I was about to ask mine.
Yeah, I know, because I've never seen that aspect. I've never asked them that aspect. It's actually rare that I actually encounter a female energy of a dragon. Even
That's
though
that's true, actually. Same.
the one who guards my house is a feminine, but that's, I mean, the vast majority are all very masculine energy.
Hmm.
We have, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were done. I've encountered it once where I think I might have an answer. It's in the Akashic records. I was shown this person had a past life. I think this was an entirely different universe or galaxy or something. It was a very different kind of place. I got the feeling that I was looking at it totally. This isn't our galaxy, which is called Nadaru, the Milky Way galaxy. And I remember that there's this like dragons council meeting. And it's funny because they were all meeting in this like amphitheater that kind of looked like that one in Rome. Do you guys know the one I'm talking about, the Colosseum?
Mhm. Yep.
So anyway, it was a dragon planet of dragons. And they're all meeting in this like Colosseum amphitheater thing. And I saw this in the records. And they were having a meeting because some of their young had been kidnapped by some bad extraterrestrial forces and taken. So just from that, I remember they were pissed essentially, and they were like, let's go and just kill them all and get our young back because they're very about like honor, protection. If you met, they're loving, but if you mess with them, they will, come down with like dragon, fire and fury. And I just remember from that they had their kids taken, so they must procreate somehow.
Right.
Also, I will say I think they're fourth dimensional. My Pleiadian spirit guide Reyna is fifth dimensional. She's from a planet called Terra in the Pleiades system. And the fifth dimensional Aaron people have actual physical bodies. Like they'll bleed if you cut them, and they make babies the exact same way we do. So, there are higher evolved sixth density and higher Pleiadians that are called like the light being Pleiadians. They've just evolved past it, and they actually, I think after sixth density or seventh, you don't need to incarnate physically anymore. So I do think, because I think the dragons are fourth density, I think on their level they have a physicality. So I do think they procreate how animals would,
Mhm.
or
And
beings would.
I want to add in, I actually have seen and I've worked with one baby dragon. So
There you go.
Well, I remember we were talking in a session, Vanessa, and I asked you about, because I've asked you a lot of questions about dragons, and one of them was what density are they in? And I thought you were going to say fifth density, but you consulted Reyna, and Reyna said fourth and seventh. And you were puzzled by that. You're like, fourth and seventh. That's weird. That's a weird answer. And it came out of your mouth, because Rain is talking through you. And it's but then I was just reading today about Elena Danon's intel on dragons, and she says that the Earth dragons are fourth density. So that corroborates with what Raina said. Now, or higher. She said fourth density, or they can appear in higher densities. And so you said fourth and seventh. So that's pretty interesting.
Oh, that's cool. You should send me. I don't know if you want to transcribe that, but just because I don't remember any, and when
Okay.
I'm channeling, I don't remember it.
I'll
But
send
that's
it to
really
you.
cool.
Yeah.
I didn't remember Raina said that.
Yeah.
So
So let's see. I have another couple of questions, and then we have 11 minutes to go. 10 minutes. All right. Do dragons like to have fun? I know that you said they're a warrior race, but do they like to have fun?
Yeah, from my experience, they have a really great sarcastic wit to them. Yeah, but I'm gonna absolutely back Vanessa as well. They're the most peaceful, loving, protective, guarding, but don't make them mad. Like they will absolutely, absolutely come at something. That dragon fire energy is in all of them.
Now, there seems to have been a war between the Draco and the dragons on this planet. Do you guys know anything about that?
Well,
Yeah.
that was what I was describing earlier when I said
Okay.
another race came here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So
I thought you were probably talking about the Draco because who else would have the power because the Draco are a type of dragon. And so as Elena Denon says, there's two types of physical dragons, Draco, Alpha Draconans, Ciakahrr. And for those who haven't heard that term, Ciakahrr, those are all names for what we call the Draco.
I actually really don't like it when people lump dragons in with Draco. Like I really
Okay.
not at all like at
Yeah.
all.
that's yeah, it's they're very so essentially they all come, you know how like all races of human, we're all kind of a race of human, right? You know, white people, Asian people, whatever. Technically, technically, a very long time ago, the Ciakahrr reptilians, their root race is the same root race as the dragons, and we're talking millions of millennia back, guys. So there's been so much. That's like saying like a cat and a tiger are the same race. They're not. They're totally different cultures. And what's funny is I think Raina told me once that the Ciakahrr are actually they're a race that broke off from the original dragons and they hybridized themselves with more of a different race. Like more, I think it was more of like a humany type race, and that's why they're much smaller than the other dragons. But they're so different, and they're very different cultures, and they're a lot meaner. Also, the Ciakahrr are fourth dimensional only, and I know that there's higher dimensional factions of the dragons that are like so high elevated, so high frequency, so high dimensional. And they're very wise. It's a very beautiful culture. They're totally different cultures. What's kind of interesting is so on Earth, we're like a hybrid race, right? We have reptilian genetics, we have Anunnaki genetics, we have gray genetics, we have, a lot of the Lyran-based people's genetics, like we have Lyrans, Pleiadians, that sort of thing. It's so funny that even in these bodies we're in right now, we do have some reptilian genetics because that does kind of give us this frequency match on a base level, everybody to the Earth Dragons, just a little bit, just a hint. Usually having some sort of past life or past experience with them gives you a higher one, but we are a little bit part reptilian in these bodies, which is kind of interesting.
And I want to add in that the reptilians that came in and started that war, they also were the same Draco that dealt with the Atlanteans, and they work for somebody else. And that they were also taken over, just like the Draco took over the Greys. The Greys once were a beautiful race, and then they got co-opted and lied to. The Draco that we understand, these reptilians, and this came channeled in, they work for a race of beings that do not come from the same source that we do.
Are you talking about the AI?
No, I cannot. I have not. So what they said was they come from 2 jumps away. And so jumps to me, no, that is a completely entirely different universe structure. And so essentially each universe has its own source. There are multiple sources. And this race that created with these Draco, who are very hive-minded, they do not come from the same source as we do.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of people believe that the Draco, we'll call them the Ciakahrr, because there's different types of reptilians. I've seen in people's Akashic records that there are peaceful reptilian races that aren't Ciakahrr. A lot of them are smaller, thinner, the Ciakahrr are like really beefy and like muscular and like 8, 10, 12 feet tall.
Mhm.
They look like they would beat you up, to be honest. But I've seen really like sweet, skinnier, peaceful reptilian races and stuff on other planets. So it's not all the reptilians that are bad. There's plenty of beautiful, ones, and like they all come from, I believe a lot of them come from a different universe, like she said, and it's actually said that the Ciakahrr reptilians were just dropped off in Draco from another universe because they were creating so much trouble for whatever, probably a reptilian universe they come from, where, because everything's reptilian based, they were creating so much trouble that they were kicked out of their universe and then they just started creating trouble here, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
Well,
And
we have this peaceful race called the Saurians, and people can check that out. Just briefly, it's called the Lacerta Files, Lacerta, and they're neutral toward us. So in a sense they're benevolent because they've been watching our progress, our own genetic the tinkering that was done genetically to create us. They watched that happen. They watched the Aldebarans take 10 to 20,000 monkeys that the Draco, by the way, say they created. They created the primate race. And then the Aldebarans came and took them off planet, took these monkeys off planet, came back with the first breed, the first of 7 breeds of humans. And they weren't happy with them, and they destroyed them, and they came back with a second breed, and they kept tinkering, and then other races got involved. So the Lacerta files are pretty cool because they give us a sort of a look into the beginning of humanity. But yeah, they're a peaceful reptilian race that lives under the ground, and one of them came out. She's a student, and so she was curious about us and wanted to tell us a little bit about themselves, about the Saurian race. And so we have that transcript. It's pretty cool.
I haven't heard great things about the Saurians. They work with black magic, essentially, and they work with some of the bad governments with these bad, not, I know it sounds so hokey, but they work with these like bad magic demon spell things. They're a very mystical race. They live underground, but they were the ones helping. I'm not saying it's all of them, but I know that groups of them helped the bad elite, Illuminati, whatever, make their bad spells and things that they put on society. And I know it
Okay.
sounds hokey, but I swear to God, that's what Raina said to me. Also, Aldebaran's been compromised for a really long time. So any information coming out from Aldebaran, Raina's not a fan of because it's a Lyran-based race living there, like they're humans, but they've been working with the Ciakahrr for a really long time. So I'm always a little hesitant with the channelers from Aldebaran. Just because Raina is very like particular about that sort of thing. She's like, be careful with these because maybe they don't even realize they're getting compromised information.
Right. It's hard to find the real intel, and there's
There's
all we
so
have is
much.
we only have our discernment. So we only have
Yeah.
our intuition, which and then whatever we resonate with it, then we go with that, and that's okay. So
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
right. So Abby, what do you think? We got 1.5 minutes before Vanessa has to go. She has a student.
Yeah, I have to start preparing. I'm teaching a class right now for psychic mentorship. So I have one of my students in about an hour.
Well, let me just ask you guys one more question and then we'll wrap it up. Do female humans have a special relationship with dragons? And if so, why?
I don't see any difference between female and male. I have equal amount of male clients and female clients that have dragons.
Okay. Because
Mhm.
it seems like in literature, it's always there's a woman and a dragon. There's this little tiny being who is a person, and then this massive dragon, and they're just like hanging out together, and it's like it's almost never a male, you know?
No, I have tons. I have plenty of male clients that have a dragon and they're close with dragons.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's pretty even, male or female. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we've I don't know if we've cracked the matrix, but we've at least gone outside the normal stuff that we learn in school, because in school we're taught that dragons are in fairy tales and it's for children and it's total fiction. Then we have all these movies which come out, and then those are for kids and families too, and it's all fiction and it's all fun and it's all, wouldn't it be cool if a dragon that breathed fire existed and we could ride them? That'd be amazing. Too bad that doesn't exist. And here's Abby saying no. She had a client who was a dragon rider. And that was one of my questions. Can we ride dragons? And you're like, yes, we can ride dragons. It's cool that they let us.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was cool. I think Earth used to be higher dimensional, at least in certain places, and I think we've fell somehow. I think just from the records. I don't know if Abby agrees.
I honestly, I mean, I think that we have been reset so many times here. Who's to say is my Wi-Fi? I'm completely lagging, and I'm
Okay.
sorry.
At least we can hear you.
Okay, that's great.
We can hear you.
So actually, I want to ask Abby, because I know, what do you think is the main message the dragons have for humanity?
Oh goodness. All right, can you guys just give me like
Well,
10 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, how about
go
I'll
ahead.
go first, and then you can finish us off, I guess.
Yeah.
I think just from talking to so many dragon spirit guides, their main message is be brave, stand up for yourself, and go for what you want. Dragon spirit guides are here to show you that you can do it. They're kind of have that force, that fire behind the people that they work with. And dragon spirit guides really want you to be brave and go for what you want. So I think that would be their main message.
What I'm hearing right now is they first said, don't be afraid to go deep. And when I'm going in deep, I'm going really, really like I'm grounding my energy so far down into the planet, and I'm locking my energy field into here. And they're saying that when we're able to do that, once you go in deep, don't be afraid of the expansion. I think so many of the humans here have been told to hold your energy in, hold your light in, keep it to yourself, where they're showing like expand your energy field out, because when you go deep and you're so connected here, when you expand out and you grow your energy out, then you are almost able to, because now I want to look up with my head, like expand up and then bring in your connection from source up down through the crown. And then it's almost like you're waking up and pulling down memories of yourself. You're pulling down memories of who you are and expanding into that field, because they're keying in right now and reminding you that all of these energy waves that are coming in, they're coming in so fast. It's all about remembrance, and they're all aids. And Vanessa said it earlier, we've already won. It's already done. It's just, there should be no fear anymore. It is already locked into a timeline. And the more that we're remembering and we're holding that in and going deep and anchoring that in, the more that we can expand and come home to ourselves.
It's possible that our whole race is in a state of amnesia or even hypnosis, so that we're being hypnotized on a daily basis to forget who we are. And so it would be beautiful if we had guardians, protectors in the form of dragons who are encouraging us to reclaim our power, to remember who we are, as Abby says. And one way we can do that is, she says, to ground in the earth, the living being that is the earth, as you both mentioned, and then to use that power, the earth's power, to then give us a better feeling for our own power. So that's fantastic. So the dragons are encouraging us. This is wonderful. This is great. And Vanessa, you got your book coming out, The Beings, and that's tomorrow on Kindle. So go find that.
Yeah, it's a hard copy is going to be on Amazon too, and Audible. So
Okay, the hard copy is available too.
yeah, starting tomorrow. Hard copy.
Okay.
I'm about to order like 10 of them. I'm so excited. Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm going to get my hard copy. Good. Well, thank you both for joining us. Abby, we got all your audio, even though your visual is glitching a little bit, it's all right. Maybe the dragons said, no, we need some of her energy. We're going to take it down to the core of the earth. And so they took away your visual. That's okay. So thank you both for coming together to talk about dragons today. And I hope that we can all access their power, because the dragons are telling us that that's our next move, that we need to, as Vanessa says, bravely look toward our own power.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having us, Jock.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much, Jock.
Nice to see you both today, and be well, and I'll see you in the core of the earth.
All right, bye guys. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.